And on this, Katie, can I give you the floor to open the call?
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining today's call. It's an exciting and busy time, so we know that we just need to make the best use of everybody's time here today on the call. And just to quickly update, I think we've shared the agenda that today primarily we have an update from the Global Fund Secretariat. Françoise Vanny has joined us, as I'm sure have many other colleagues. I've been seeing some of them jumping in. So we will go to that update first and have just open discussion, but just a couple of really quick announcements from, or sort of plans from our side, just to say that we're busy planning for all of the events and conversations that we hope to lead around the replenishment, as well as partnering with a number of different organizations among you for some side events and other workshops and conversations, which is really exciting because it's nice to get together and feel we can get together and do those things again. But just to say that you can find on our website, we have created a page where we're trying to sort of corral all of the information that we have. Once we have the confirmed, and it's early in my morning and I've already been on a few calls, so forgive me if I've missed it already, but when we have the confirmed date and timing of the pledging session, then we will start to advertise sort of the calendar that we have there. But you can find what we have now and what we know now, which is a lot of to be confirmed. But we do invite all of you who are going to be attending in New York City to join us, GFAN in person, on the Friday evening from about 4 till 6:30 or 7, and on the day of Saturday the 17th for the full day, for various conversations to help us both get prepared for the week and think about sort of kind of the big issues that are coming up on the heels of replenishment and sort of the follow-up from replenishment, so we can sort of start those conversations. And we will be doing, and we're still working it out, but the delegations to the Global Fund Board, communities, developed and developing NGOs, we will be sort of incorporating a session with them and many of you on different topics through those through that meeting time. So the RSVP form for that is on that website page, and if Conte hasn't already done it, which he has in the chat, you can find that there. So and we are still confirming, but really hopeful that we will have virtual participation capacity. So even if you're not coming to New York City, but if we are able to secure that, please sign yourself up for virtual participation in those sort of 2 days to be a part of the conversation, even if you're not, able to travel to New York City for the replenishment. So I know that we have a presentation from our colleagues at the Secretariat that Conte is going to get up on the screen for us, and I'm not going to waste any more of Françoise or colleagues' time listening to me with these reminders. But so Françoise, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that somewhere this summer you've had a minute to rest and refresh before the craziness of this fall, but somehow I doubt it. But welcome back to a GFAN call. It hasn't been too long. Glad to have you, and please go ahead with your update. We're all looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us, especially if it includes confirmation of the pledging session date and time. Françoise.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you everyone for joining, for making the time for this call today. It's a very important call. We have a lot of updates to share with you. We are all extremely busy across the partnership. I'm joining this call from South Africa. Diane is currently traveling with Peter in Australia, and everybody is very busy in this last mile, 5 days before the replenishment conference in New York. So very busy times, very exciting times. We have a lot to share. Thank you everybody for your commitment, and let's go with the update. I do want to say that we have a bunch of colleagues from the Secretariat joining the call as well, so I will probably call them in to jump in for specific updates or to answer. Next slide, please. We will cover today a sort of recap on latest developments, in particular on the donor side. We'll provide you with the latest when it comes to conference planning. I know everybody is very keen to hear about that. And then our communication and campaign plans.
So, Françoise, I'm just hoping that you can hear me. We can mostly hear you, but might suggest
my connection is probably a little bit on my camera.
Yeah. If you can hear me, Françoise, maybe turn your video off. That's not that we don't want to see your lovely face and your smile, but sometimes that just helps. So please go ahead, and hopefully it was pretty much okay. I think we heard 98% of what you were saying. So go ahead.
Okay, 98 is probably okay. So yes, we'll go through the agenda that you see outlined there, recent developments, and particularly donor outreach priorities, conference preparations, and comms and campaign update. We have about 4 or 5 slides for each, and I'll try to cover all the ground and leave time for your comments and questions. Okay, so let's start with the next slide, please. So, and the next one. So just to state the very obvious for all of us, we are super excited with the replenishment and all the engagement from all the stakeholders of the partnership moving forward. However, we need to acknowledge that the context is a little bit challenging, to say the least, and that we need to take that into account, obviously, in our advocacy efforts. The latest we heard from the IMF in July was that growth estimates for 2022 and 2023 have been revised down further, reflecting obviously the impact of COVID-19, but mostly the impact of the war in Ukraine, as well as the impact of further lockdowns in China, among other factors. So that's certainly something that we are up against, but we are going with full energy to overcome the challenge of that. So that's the situation. The next slide, please, is just a quick recap on where we are in terms of ODA trends. Next slide. And what it shows us is that we have indeed recorded a slight increase in terms of ODA trends, but though this is mostly linked to the response to COVID-19 and mostly driven by vaccines, but this increase is obviously very far from being commensurate with the needs, and let alone the 50-year-old commitment to the 0.7% target. So we very much need to continue to push that envelope further if we want to sustain the investment in global health. So let's go into the next slide, and I'm sure this is where you're going to be very interested, because this is the update on our engagement with donors and where we are at this stage. So I mean, first of all, just to state the obvious, very, very intense engagements with all of our key donors at the moment, and obviously very strong engagement with the host to make sure that we leverage the influence and the commitment of the US to make the other donors increase their pledges as well, right? So all of that is very much ongoing and quite intense at the moment. So let's go through the G7 quickly, so that obviously, as you know, the G7 plus the EC represent about 80% of our resources. So we are going to focus very much on those big ones today. In terms of France, so the final decision on the French pledge, as I think many of you know, will be made by the president himself, because this is the way it works, and it's been the case for the 6th replenishment. At the moment, we very much need to continue supporting the ongoing dialogue between the White House, WH is White House, and the Élysée, because we understand that would be absolutely critical to push President Macron to make a strong pledge. Obviously, we need to secure a strong and positive recommendation on the pledge from the team at Élysée and from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we are working with advocacy networks and all partners in France to secure some last-minute advocacy efforts and events in the next few weeks in Paris with MPs, with diaspora, and so on and so forth. So very much all efforts on France to ensure a final decision at the right level. And no clear indication so far in terms of where that might land. On the UK, obviously everybody's aware that we are facing a change in leadership, and we are very much looking forward to hearing who is going to be the next Prime Minister on the 5th of September. So obviously, we do want to ensure that the UK does pledge at the conference despite the change of leadership in their government. And we are taking all sorts of risk mitigation actions, including obviously an ongoing dialogue with FCDO, but also similar to what we are doing in France, promoting and participating and supporting last push advocacy events, media activations, outreach from the US government, and so on, making sure that as soon as the new Prime Minister is confirmed, as well as the Foreign Secretary, they receive the right phone calls and the right letters, well, phone calls, ideally, to make it faster, and make sure that they come and pledge at the Replenishment Conference. So that's what we are, where we are with the UK. Quite challenging given the leadership transition. With Germany, so as you know, we have secured in May a 1.2 billion euro commitment for the German pledge, and that was included in the budget committee. However, this is not the formal pledge, and we are still advocating to try and get them to 1.3 billion euro, which would represent a 30% increase. And things are moving in the right direction there. Germany is currently considering the feasibility of finding the last 100 million euro that are needed, including through active conversations on debt to health that are kind of progressing and might be a way to ensure that top up from Germany. Everybody is watching Germany very closely because obviously they have already made this 1.2 commitment and they chair the G7. So that would definitely be a very strong signal if they were to announce a 30% increase in New York. So that's it for this slide. I hope I'm not going too fast. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Japan, that's very exciting, and we are crossing fingers and toes because we expect Japan to announce at TICAD in Tunisia very, very soon at the end of this month, where, I mean, everything is sort of in the works. The pledge decision has now reached the cabinet. We know they are working towards an increase in line with the investment case, which would represent $1.08 billion. As you know, Japan uses to pledge in dollars, which obviously is very helpful to us, but represents a very significant effort for them to do that. And the news there is that the commitment would be coming from both budgets of foreign affairs, as it's usually the case, and for the first time, the Ministry of Health. So that's new, and that's the way we've been able to not secure yet, but at least get them to consider an increased pledge in line with the new investment case. Again, anything that Japan announces at TICAD, if confirmed, would be an extremely strong signal because obviously it would be an early pledge from a G7 member and would very much encourage everybody else to align. So we are watching this one and pushing this one forward very, very closely. EC, so not so wonderful news on the EC side. So we are very much trying to push in the next few days and weeks. At the moment, what we're hearing is that they are signaling a flat pledge, which obviously we are not completely satisfied with. So we are working very closely with the US to support high-level outreach from them with the EC President von der Leyen, and trying to also secure some to secure the high-level engagement from the EC at the pledging conference, potentially from the President herself. At least this is what we are advocating for. And we are counting on our African champions who have been reaching out and are continuing to reach out to von der Leyen to push her to increase the pledge that is currently being considered. So very active also on the EC. Canada, very important, obviously, because last time I think we had this briefing, we were just before the IAS conference, and obviously a very strong presence, engagement across the partnership there, very exciting. And I know I've missed it, sadly, but I know it was a very, very strong engagement there from all corners. Obviously, as we all know, Canada did not pledge. However, we remain very optimistic when it comes to the possibility to get the Prime Minister to announce a strong pledge, hopefully a 30% increase in New York, if we ensure continued high-level pressure from both the US government, obviously, but also all our advocacy network to make sure Prime Minister Trudeau is completely convinced to get to that point. So at the end, we considered it was not such a bad thing to not get the pledge at IAS. If we can secure it is a stronger pledge, then that's even better. So Italy now. So obviously Italy is also going through a political transition. And we were a little bit worried that might hinder their ability to pledge in New York. However, the good news is that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs remains very positive that they will be able to announce in New York, despite the fact that their general elections are happening afterwards. And we understand Prime Minister will attend UNGA, so hopefully we'll get him at our pledging conference. Let's see. And we are working with the US for them to continue their pressure, their friendly pressure, with their Italian partners these days. Okay, so I think we've covered G7. The next slide is a little bit of an overview of other donors. I will go more quickly on that. Obviously very important because we still need to secure all of them. So a few highlights here. On the Nordics and the mid-sized European donors first, as I'm sure many of you are aware, at the moment it's unclear how much our Nordic donors would be willing and able to increase. But potentially we fear it might be less than the 30% that are required. Certainly Sweden announced the 5% increase ahead of their elections, as you know, which was not a bad thing because we wanted to secure their commitment anyway, given the elections, but still. So it's unclear there. We are working on that very closely. We have some signals on other mid-sized EU donors who might be able to increase by more than 30%, such as Spain or Ireland. Obviously, still to be secured, but we have positive signals on those fronts. Or by 30%. Obviously, we got Luxembourg, who already announced we are working on the Netherlands. So that's to complete the sort of EU landscape. Australia, Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, India. A lot of expectations there. As I said, Peter and Diane and Lady Rose, our vice chair, are currently visiting Australia. Everything we're hearing back from them is that it's going very well. So we hope we can get a much increased pledge from Australia. I mean, much more than 30%. We have put forward a very big ask there. We are also seeking major increases from Korea and India, and first-time pledges from Indonesia and Singapore. Indonesia, I think, is quite secured at this point in time. Singapore still in the works, but a lot of expectations on both fronts. Gulf donors, we are asking them to increase by more than 100%. We've been engaging, traveling to Qatar. We expect our chair to travel to Saudi Arabia in the next few days. So we have active engagement, and also from the US on such front. And yeah, the difference between Gulf donors and some of the European donors, obviously, is that they can modify their decision pretty much at the last minute. So that can be an important potential for us to work with. Private sector. Very important, obviously, major private sector donors are on track to announce increased pledges, like obviously the Gates Foundation, RED, and others. We are working very closely with all of them. As you've seen, several have already announced commitments, and we have a few early pledges in the pipeline. So between now and the replenishment, we should have between 2 and 3, probably 3, I mean, yeah, most surely 3 additional private sector early pledges. So that's also a very strong signal, and useful for us to keep the momentum high before the pledging conference. Obviously, the visibility and the engagement of the private sector at the pledging conference itself will be key to help push them through the line and making sure they make strong pledges in New York. So I think that's probably it from a sort of overview of where we are with key donors perspective. If we can go to the next slide. Yes, so that's it. I know that Sophie and other colleagues are on the line, so in case you have specific questions on specific donors, I'm sure we can provide a little bit more updates. So yeah, here we are, end of August, less than 30 days before the pledging conference, and we have finally got sort of confirmation in terms of the conference planning, sequencing of the different events. So next slide, please. We have now secured the sort of big segments that you would recognize from what we had in Lyon, although obviously the context is very, very different, the host is very different and all of that. But those segments you will be familiar with. So we will have a big campaign partnership event and reception that is going to be very open, dynamic, featuring all the full breadth of the partnership with speakers from communities, high-profile discussions, and so on. And that would culminate in a reception with a musical performance. So it's going to be super exciting, and you hear more of that about that in the next few slides, both in terms of when exactly it happens, where, but also the sort of campaign dimension of it. Then we will have a head of state, head of government, head of delegation dinner. We had that in Lyon, you may remember. It's a key moment to do the last sort of arm twisting and make sure that we are well prepared for high-level engagement at the pledging session. Then we will have a private sector innovation event, which obviously will showcase private sector in global transmission, both announcing their pledges towards the 7 replenishment. And finally, the pledging session, where we will have the final announcement of the outcome by President Biden as the host. So these are the big segments, and this is the order in which they are going to happen. So I think on the next slide, we can see the exact timing for those 4 segments. We've been obviously working very closely with the US government to make sure that we had the right timing for each segment. Oh, before we go into the exact timings, participants. It would be obviously an inclusive partnership-wide event, while recognizing that we will need to adapt the delegation sizes and number of participants, given the constraints we face, including security constraints, whether of the venues or given President Biden's expected participation, the context of UNGA. So it's a little bit more complicated than in previous settings like Montreal. But obviously the intent is that all events will have representation from across the partnership. So delegations include public and private sector donors, both current and potential, Global Fund champions, including the co-hosts of the prep meeting or the heads of states of implementing partner countries, a select list. Obviously not all of our implementing partner countries would be able to UN agency, technical and
Francoise, we seem to have lost your audio. Sorry, I was having difficulty finding my own unmute button. Can you hear me, or have you dropped off? It looks like we may have lost Francoise. Ah, there we go. Okay.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, super. And sorry for the interruption there. I'm not sure what happened. What else? Yeah. And then we will have observers. So board members from the non-donor constituencies, obviously, because the donors are already invited in the first category. Obviously, GFAN and friends organizations, this goes without saying. Other multilateral and regional partners or special guests that we may have, including perhaps celebrities, and obviously the speakers invited on an individual basis. So all of that is well defined, very much in line with what you've experienced in the past. But there is a little bit of an additional constraint, as I said, because it's New York and we have some additional logistics and security constraints to take into account. So I think that's it for this slide. On the next slide, I think is the final layout of the different events. Wonderful. So, okay, so this is what we finally tried over the past few days. or the different segments of our replenishment conference. So on the 18th, and following the GFAN engagement that will start on the 16th and the 17th that Katie mentioned in our introduction, we will have the Fight for What Counts campaign event, big event at Gotham Hall, starting at 2:30 until 6, and then followed by the reception with the musical performance and all of that. That big event, very open, very lively, very campaigny. I see Charlie is on the line. She's working very hard to make it absolutely exciting. We expect to be able to receive approximately 650 participants. That's the capacity we have for such event. Then followed by the head of delegation dinner, I mentioned before. This will be hosted at Salesforce. Well, very kindly hosting us there, and this one will be by invitation only. It would be much more limited in terms of numbers, as you can imagine. Then on the 19th in the morning, we'll have the private sector innovation event, also at Salesforce, although in a different, I understand, a different room, but still at Salesforce, and also by invitation. And then the pledging session, the thing that everybody has been waiting to hear about, is finally confirmed on the 19th in the afternoon. And the invitations are in the works, in the host hands as I speak, so not formally sent yet. We are waiting for the latest details, and Sophia might be able to provide any latest news on that front. But we have landed on the 19th afternoon, and we are building the program on around between 2 and 6, if I'm not mistaken, bearing in mind the expected participation of the President of the United States. The size would be, the capacity of the room is approximately 350. So this is why I was referring before to some logistic constraints that we have. We cannot go further that number for that important session. Okay, so next slide. So yeah, I should say so all of our guests have not received the invitations yet, right? What they have received as we speak is the save the date, and the save the date was spanning from the 19th to the 21st. So the fact that we are now landing on the 19th is sort of new. So we've been able to kind of informally update our key partners and donors, but we are waiting for the final invitations and the second save the date, let's call it like that, to make sure that everybody is updating on dates. Finally, perhaps pledge announcement platforms. Obviously, we are organizing our pledging conference in the middle of the UNGA high-level week. So donors will have, in a way, multiple opportunities and multiple platforms in which they can pledge. I would say, however, that most pledges, hopefully all of them, are expected to be announced or re-announced at the pledging session, because if they are too spread and not repeated at the pledging session, it might be a bit chaotic. Nevertheless, the week offers a bunch of opportunities for donors to pledge where they see fit. Obviously, the UNGA general debate speeches for heads of states and government to repeat or announce their pledge. Goalkeepers, also the Global Citizen Concert at Central Park. So that really spans over the entire week. The opportunities to pledge. The opportunities to pledge. And then on the private sector, perhaps more specific platforms, we will have obviously the innovation event I've already mentioned, but also the Red Nightcap on the 19th in the evening, very late. Also the Clinton Global Initiative taking place on those same dates, and the Concordia Summit. So a bunch of opportunities for donors to share with the world their commitment to support the Global Fund 7 replenishment. Okay, so I think that's it. And I think just the next slide, and before I hand over to Ravini to talk through the comms and campaigns plan. Obviously, this is presented as a sequence with donors engagement and then conference planning, but actually the two are very much linked. And we are trying to navigate both the conference planning and the outreach to donors in an articulated way. So we know that obviously early announcement of at least 30% increase from any of our major donor is a key factor that will influence the outcome of the conference itself. I mentioned the criticality of the Japan's announcement expected at TCAD in particular. Obviously, we expect the US invitations to heads of state and government to be issued very soon, and that will be key to secure high-level participation at the conference and therefore higher pledges, right? And at the moment, we are sort of not able to really do that because we are waiting for the final invitations coming from the US, because that would be much more powerful than if it came from our secretariat, of course. So we have made significant progress, as I shared before, but there is still huge potential to influence the outcome. And so every advocacy action between now and in New York could still have a very significant potential to influence the level of pledges that we secure. And we will need to obviously to coordinate on messaging and advocacy strategy around the conference outcome, as well as post-conference with the host and advocacy partners like you. So I think that's probably it for me. So yes, the idea now is really to create a dynamic and high energy set of events in New York, and we're going to hear a little bit about that, and then make sure that we have the right messaging post pledging conference, and that's something we are already working on. So I think that's it for me. I've spoken a lot. I hope that was you could hear me okay and that it was helpful. And I'm handing over to Ravini, who is going to share with us a very exciting update from the com side.
Thanks, Francois. I think, sorry, I think there's a bit of an echo. Sorry about that. Myself and Charlie are actually sharing a room, so hence the echo. So just to dive into the comms and campaign plan, I'll sort of give an overarching sort of outline of what the main sort of touch points for comms are. As you can see, I mean, there's been a huge sort of drumbeat, and there's been a huge push in our various markets over the last few weeks. As we go into this sort of last final 4 to 5 weeks, what you'll see in the next couple of slides is very much focused around what we're doing in September. That's not to say that between now and the first week of September, there's a whole lot of other things happening, including a possible pledge from Japan this weekend, hopefully South Africa as well, and then of course we go into sort of the campaign proper. So if I can have the next slide, please. Great. So on the 7th of September, that's the launch date of our results report. We hope to launch it around noon, but we haven't actually finalized the exact timings for that, but we'll hope to update you on the next call. So this will be the full report and the summary in English, with the French version to follow shortly after. There'll be an embargoed report. We'll have a partners toolkit. The social media team is working really hard to sort of have some really great tiles, and we'll give that all to you in advance to be able to share. We're looking at embargoed interviews with Peter in advance. He's actually going to be traveling during the 7th and 8th in Tanzania, but we have a few slots with him to do some really good interviews in some of the markets that we're really looking to sort of push in. As I said, the exact release time is still to be decided, but we will let you know as soon as we know that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just, this is a very sort of snapshot overview. I've sort of kept it to the main dates that you needed to be aware of for September. We're kicking off with a media partnership that we've signed with Politico. This is so the week of the 5th to the 11th of September, Politico Future Pulse, which is the US newsletter, which sort of hits a very sort of US Hill policy audience, will have a Global Fund editorial takeover. Then going into the next week, the 12th to the 26th of September, that's sort of a good sort of chunk of like the replenishment week itself. We will be doing a video outstream on the main sort of politico.com. This features our new hero film, all the other sort of activation advocacy videos featuring our champions. A lot of you have really been instrumental in making some of these happen over the last few months. So huge thanks to all our champions and spokespeople who really, even in IAS in Canada, we've had lots of people come up, and the social team here were able to sort of pull together some great new content. So we're hoping that by putting this on Politico, that'll even get the type of visibility that it really needs. On the 16th of September, we have a foreign policy media roundtable on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. We've essentially sort of commissioned foreign policy to do an issues brief, and this is very much aimed at a business and economic audience around the importance of investing in health to catalyze economic growth in a post-pandemic world. So we've got Peter and Dr. Kabruka on the panel, and we're working with foreign policy to sort of figure out who the other sort of panelists are. But the idea is that, as we go into sort of, the replenishment actual days of the 18th and 19th, we really need a very good economic angle news hook. And this, we think, will actually lead to some of the bigger stories that journalists will be interested in. So, when we're trying to target the likes of Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times. So on this, I would really sort of welcome any names that you have in terms of economic and business journalists, because these are the core sort of cohort that we'd like to sort of engage with. So any connections to that, any sort of recommendations you have, I would very much welcome that. So then we go into the 18th and 19th of September, the replenishment days. Francoise gave a really good overview of what's happening as an outline. But in terms of the media moments, what we think will be the big ones for us are obviously the Fight for What Counts campaign event. This, we're going to open it to the press. We'll have a dedicated section for them. We'll make the sort of the logistics available for them to be able to interview our headline panelists, as well as our champions and advocates that will be on the panels. Then our private sector innovation event, harnessing the power of the private sector partnership to end the 3 diseases by 2030. That will open it up to the press as well, and we'll have sort of a standalone area where they are able to sort of speak to the experts from that event. And then in the evening, afternoon, from 2 to 6 p.m. is our pledging session press conference from 2 to 6. And the details around the press conference is kind of up in the air at the moment, but we hope to have more details on this. It's very much in discussion with the White House and security and protocol with the way and the format that this will work. So stay tuned on that. And sort of just to end the week after that, from the 19th to the 25th of September, our sort of political drumbeat continues with the morning healthcare newsletter, which hits a very much EU policy audience, and that kind of completes the month. So before I sort of hand over to Charlie to do the campaign bit, I just wanted to say that, as Francoise mentioned, we've had a huge sort of push in the UK. Just because of all the challenges that we've had with the government, with the Prime Minister not in place. One of the things that we commissioned, which I might have mentioned in a previous call, or Christy might have, is a piece of research that we commissioned Portland, our UK media agency, to do. That story has now been published in the Times. So essentially, we polled. The research project was around looking at the Brits' attitudes towards global public health spending. And it really did bring up some really sort of key interesting touch points. The idea that health security cuts across best, meaning if there is a pandemic happening in a neighboring country, it's going to affect me. So I should be invested. I should be making aware that my politicians are invested, and therefore the country should be essentially funding public health more. That was the first point. The second thing is around this idea that we need to be reframing the number we want. If you look at what we're asking of the UK, it's £1.82 billion, but when you look at that as a percentage, it's only 0.02% of the annual GDP, or 0.06% over 3 years, which is what you'll see in the sort of the takeaways from that. And then the third point that seemed to resonate really well is the fact that if we use our full name, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, that seemed to really resonate with a British audience who know that we're talking specifically about these 3 diseases. So you might see that in our press releases, for example, we tend to start with that headline branding of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, and then after that we shorten it to the Global Fund. So if we do come back with feedback like that once in a while, that you understand the thinking behind that. So just on that point, it's been picked up by the Times. The health editor Kat Lay has run the story now. I'll put the link to that story after this. And we also had Stephen Hammond, who is the British former health secretary for the UK, an op-ed which ran under him. So we obviously developed that with Portland, and then it's sort of essentially been published as well in the red box of the Times. So yeah, just wanted to sort of close on that. Please amplify when I send it around. And for those of you on the UK Working Group Civil Society call on Thursday, we'll give you more details around that. With that, I'll sort of hand over to Charlie, who's sitting right next to me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ravini and Charlie. If I could just note that we only have less than 20 minutes left in the call, so if not to put your stuff at the end, but just to be as quick as possible. Thank you so much.
No problem. So I will quickly rattle through some of the campaign amplification opportunities in the run-up to NYC. So our Count Me In is actually on the next slide, so I will wait to talk about that. But just so everyone's aware, I think everyone has this already, but we do have a live content toolkit available in English and French, which is packed full of relevant live information, which you guys can post at any time. So the links are there for anyone that needs a reminder, but if you're ever looking for content, it's packed. So hopefully you've got what you need in there to keep you going until our newer toolkits are released. Everyone already knows about the new hero film, but please do push that out to your channels, share it if you haven't already, and remember many people on this call are actually in it, so it's nice and fun to highlight that as well if you haven't already. Please do also keep sharing the What Counts to Me messages from all the wonderful GFANers that we filmed in Berlin. They're going out every couple of days on social media. They're doing really well. They're having a great reaction. So if you spot them, please do feel free to keep amplifying. Ravini has already mentioned the results report toolkit, but that will of course be packed full of new data and information that can also be used to really push the campaign messages. And then finally, we will have the new and final campaign toolkit coming out. I think it's estimated for the 9th of September. This will have a fresh batch of content. Some of it can be used straight away and some of it's designed to be used on specific days. There will be a big 3-day countdown. So we did a 5-day countdown in the run up to the prep meeting. We're doing a 3-day countdown to NYC. So there'll be lots and lots more content coming out. I know that we've been talking to different people individually to make sure that you're supported with any kind of asset creation that you need. We're sharing design files. You know, if there is stuff that you need, please do let us know sooner rather than later so that we can assist you. We're happy to share designs as much as we can, and we of course really do want to support you with all the fantastic amplification that you're already doing. Before I move on to Count Me In, and this also relates to the question that Margaret's just put in the chat. We didn't put it in the slides because it wasn't signed and sealed, but I'm super excited to let everyone know that we have secured some pro bono advertising space in Times Square. We're going to have 2 giant digital screens in a really prominent, prestigious location. And this is going to run for 5 minutes every hour for 24 hours for 4 whole days, the 18th to the 21st of September. So this is a real triumph for all of us, and we are absolutely thrilled. And like I say, this has been gifted to us on a pro bono basis, so we are super happy about this. We are working on the creative for that at the moment, but when we come out with the final toolkit, I think what we'll also do is try and create a little bit of fun and buzz around this advertising campaign. You know, encourage all of you to go to Times Square, to take pictures of it and to share it on social media. I think it'll be a really great content capture opportunity for everyone, and it should be quite exciting. So watch this space on that. Next slide, please, and final slide from me. I think everyone has heard about our new petition, which is asking everyone to add your name to the Fight for What Counts petition and tell the world, count me in. This is a really nice, simple activation that's designed to just cause a bit more buzz and momentum on social media. It takes just a couple of minutes to take part. I know lots of you already have, and we've seen lots of support on the GFAN channels as well. Please do feel free to keep on pushing this out to your channels. We would really appreciate anything you can do to support this. And like I say, we're just aiming to sort of flood the social media channels with lots of these colourful graphics and spread the word as we head towards the countdown. Where can we access the petition? It's fightforwhatcounts.org. The link is in here. I don't know if these slides get shared around afterwards, but you can access it there. But it's nice and simple, fightforwhatcounts.org. And Margaret, yes. Times Square, 5 minutes every hour, every day from September the 18th to the 21st. Yes. So honestly, the brand visibility is going to be unparalleled. We are really, really excited. That's it from me, and happy to answer any more questions. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks again for your ongoing support.
Thank you, Charlie. So lovely to see you again, and so lovely to see all those videos of GFAN advocates from the Berlin meeting coming out and all of these great tools. And just to say that, like, I put it in the chat, but we will pull out all of the links and make sure that they're all accessible when we put up the notes from the recording of this call, as well as any as resources. So thank you very much. I think I just wanted to go back. There was a question in the chat earlier on from Margaret about whether there's sort of a financial threshold for private sector to be on the stage during the pledging event. So I'm hoping we can come back to that with you, Francoise, and or other colleagues. Also, I just 2 quick questions sort of on my part was, could we revisit the sort of the slide about how the pledges are going to be communicated and the press conference, and that I think maybe I misunderstood, but it would just be really helpful if we could go back. I think it was about slide 13 or 14. If we could just make sure that we're clear about like how the pledges are going to be announced and when we'll have hopefully a final number, that would be great, or how we're going to approach that. And then a really basic question on my part, and I already see Mick's hands raised, and hope that others who have questions will pop their hands up or note in the chat that they have a question. And just to say, will the pledging session be live streamed like it was last time? Because GFAN is hoping to host colleagues who are not invited to the main sessions, but are in New York City to sort of a bit of a viewing session, a viewing party, whenever that does happen. So a few quick questions there, Francoise, but perhaps Francoise and Ravini and Charlie, but perhaps we could hear from Mick and Deepak first, and then come to you all for responses. So Mick, please go ahead. And it's lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Okay, just briefly, 2 quick things. One, a quick observation about the UK. The 2 candidates for Prime Minister are 2 very, very unpleasant people. They're really unpleasant. They have no care for people at all. And I just wonder about your approach with whichever one of them, they're as bad as each other. So whichever one becomes Prime Minister, the way to influence them is to show that they're going to gain some personal political advancement, because that's what interests them. They are both dishonest. And I just wonder if you've thought about that kind of approach, because I think that's what it will take. My other question is, at this late, I mean, I think you've done an amazing job with the media and with the organization and everything like that. I think that it really is impressive. So my question really is, how much realistically can community and civil society actually influence the pledges at this stage? Because it seems like that is a very, very much a political arena. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Mick. Please go ahead, Deepak.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for wonderful sharing. It seems that the exciting days are coming, but it will be is going to be hectic. And yes, GFAN already started its initiative to follow up with Indonesia as the G20 nation. They didn't pledge in during the 6th replenishment, and there are other G20 nations who didn't pledge during 6th replenishment. And in this regard, the work we are also closely working. I represent AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and we are closely working with C20 Secretariat, and we are following up on this also. Maybe our focus to all those G20 nations who didn't pledge during 6th replenishment needs special follow-up. Maybe any update on this will be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. So just noting that Francoise is having some difficulty hearing the questions, but I don't know, Francoise, if you've heard anything or are hearing me now and are able to jump in.
Yeah,
Or-
I can try. Yeah, I can
Thank
try,
you.
Katie. I think I've captured most of them. Let me start by the end, actually. So indeed, Deepak, absolutely, we are engaging very actively with the G20 as a body, and we are trying to influence the debate, the outcomes, and obviously to use the platform per se to leverage the commitment of G20 members towards the Global Fund. Individually as well. So I mentioned a few, but obviously the Gulf countries, Korea, Australia, these are all G20 non-G7 members that we are actively engaging with and hoping to increase the participation from. And great that you are engaging with the C20 group, because this is really active and really valuable for us. On the UK, Mick, yeah, we will have to, we have to navigate as best as we possibly can. The UK is obviously a major donor to the Global Fund, and we need to mitigate the risks the best we can. So trying to leverage the people or the organizations that can really have an influence on the new Prime Minister. And we think probably the most critical piece is going to be a phone call from the US President himself, or at least an outreach at the highest possible level from the US to the newly appointed minister to secure the best possible outcome. But it's hard indeed. It's a challenging context, but we do have, as you know, a very strong engagement across parties in the UK, similarly to what we have in the US and in other places. And that cross-party support is usually what helps us navigate leadership transitions, such as the one we are going through. Yeah, we are not admitting defeat, and absolutely not. We continue to count on strong allies in the UK, and will and hope to navigate such risks. Live stream, I believe this is part of the plan. Charlie can provide pledge announcement, Ravini. But my understanding in terms of the pledge announcement is that at the moment it is being finalized with the host, because obviously this is quite critical that it is well aligned with the host. But what we are trying to secure with them is indeed a final announcement of the outcome of the replenishment conference at the end of the pledging session on the 19th, around 6 o'clock, when all the donors have pledged. We are able to make the calculations, and then hopefully with the high-level representation from the host, announce the final outcome, followed by a news release as we usually do. But I would leave colleagues perhaps to complement on such fronts. I hope you could hear me. Over to Ravini and Charlie for any addition. Thanks.
Yes, that's correct, Francoise. Sorry. Yeah, that's correct, Francoise. The idea is that at the end, so at 6 p.m. or just slightly after, we'll be able to sort of have that final press release issued. There'll be a lot of work that we'll be doing with the currency calculations, etc. But we have a good team in hand to sort of have that, and we'll do a lot of the prep beforehand as well for some of the pledges that would have already come in. But yeah, we should be able to sort of update you more on that once we know more details around the timings of the press conference, etc. Thanks.
I'll just jump in on the live stream. Sorry about that. Yes, my events colleagues at the moment are working on their plans for live streaming. So there will definitely be those options there. I'm sure it'll all be on the details will all go up on the website as stuff gets confirmed. So just keep looking out for the information, and it will be there.
Thank you. Francoise, I'm just sending you a message just to re-up the question around thresholds for getting on stage, which was asked in the chat earlier, but also wanting to hand it to Liz Wallace, who had a question. So Francoise, I'll just send you a quick note, so hopefully you can see that question again. And Liz, over to you.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you for the super presentations. I'm Liz, I'm the Director of UK Policy and Advocacy at GFAN. So my question is about the timing of announcements, particularly thinking of the UK. So the FCDO, as you know, has said there's a scenario in which they're just not ready to pledge by the 19th of September, given the short timeline between the new PM and Foreign Secretary being announced and this pledging conference. I mean, we and all the advocacy partners will do everything possible to push for an announcement from the UK on the 19th, but I just want to ensure we have a really consistent message on, you know, if the FCDO say we can pledge on the 19th, but the number could be lower, or do they have a little bit more time to come up with the pledge announcement? I just wanted to hear directly from the Secretariat kind of how you would respond to that question, and whether, not just for the UK, but any other donors, you see there being any flexibility for pledges coming in a few days after the 19th, or kind of, yeah, what your message is around the importance of those pledges landing on the 19th and being part of the final number that's announced by the hosts at the end of the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Françoise or Ravini or others?
I can get started.
So are yours to answer on that, or I can maybe give a little bit more detail around. So on the 12th of September, we have a UK parliamentarian event in Portcullis House in London. And one of the things that I know that Steve and Scott and Vera, who obviously are doing a lot of work on the donor relations front for the UK, they're already starting to set up a lot of bilateral meetings. Hopefully, with by basically we are hoping that by the 5th of September, when we obviously think that it'll be Liz Truss, once she is in place, she will already know who her foreign secretary will be, and history tells us that they usually sort of announce that person at least by the 6th. And so the idea is that if we can get some meetings set up, then we'll be in a bit of a better place to have those discussions with the senior team at FCDO. So I can't actually tell you a sort of concrete answer just yet, but I know that the team is doing a lot of work to try and get the messaging in place for a variety of scenarios. And I'm hoping that by next week, at least in the next 10 days or so, we'll have a clearer picture on that.
Thank you very much. Françoise, over to you if you're able to add in, or if you're typing into the chat, that's fine too.
I'll try. So on the private sector announcement, we don't have a threshold per se, because we are trying to obviously push every single private sector partner to pledge to the maximum possible. So it's very, it varies greatly according to partners. But what we will be doing is rather orchestrating the announcements, according to level, according to the different possibilities, right? Because some private sector partners would be willing to announce at the innovation event, and this would be an appropriate platform to give such announcements the largest possible visibility. Then you have the pledging session, where we will need to orchestrate it one way or another. It's undefined yet. In Lyon, what we did, we had a sort of private sector combined sort of section, if you recall. So we'll see. And some private sector partners might announce at the other platforms that I've mentioned, including the Clinton Initiative, for example. So, and that the Global Citizen concept, there is a threshold for private sector partners to be able to be on stage. So it's all very much in the works and in progress on that front. And on pledges overall, I mean, as I think I've mentioned, and that applies to the UK, the ideal scenario for us is really to be able to have all the pledges announced or repeated in the pledging session, and for us to be able to announce the outcome of the pledging conference or the replenishment conference at the end of the pledging session. The reason for that
Françoise, we've just lost you at the important part of the reason why, sadly. Are you still there? Oh, okay. I'm not sure if anybody from the Secretariat. Oh, there.
I'm just back, and I just try to finish up. by saying why it is important to have everything at the pledging conference to the largest possible extent. It's because it's also what the host will be able to own and claim, right? It's the results of the replenishment process hosted by the US. If it happens a little bit everywhere throughout the week, we will lose that sort of, let's say, credit. So yeah, that's one of the considerations that we are navigating at the moment. Over back to you, Katie. I hope you could hear me.
Yes, we did hear you there. So thank you so much. And we are actually just over the hour of time that we put in everybody's calendars for this. So I'm going to wrap up for now. But what I would say is if there are any other questions, always feel free to reach out to us or your colleagues at the Secretariat or your contacts at the Secretariat directly. But we can just keep the conversation going. We do have GFAN calls regularly scheduled over the next few weeks, including hopefully an opportunity to discuss the results report just prior to its launch if timings and stuff work out. I do just want to quickly pass it over to Quentin for a few really quick sort of final reminders. But again, we'll just be keeping that page updated and trying to keep you all updated through the listserv with information that we have, and don't ever hesitate to reach out if there is something that we can help with or support or answer. And just thanks to Charlie, to Ravini, and to Françoise today and all of their colleagues at the Secretariat who helped them get ready for this and are doing all of this work. Looking forward to seeing you and being a part of this in New York. So Quentin, a few last reminders from us before we let everyone go.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, sorry to take up everyone's time. Just I wanted to flag that we have a pledging conference media pack, not as complete or as elaborate, I would say, but that of the Secretariat. But we have a few, so there's some talking points in it, a few extra graphics, and in particular elements that might be complementary in terms of messaging to some of the things that are coming directly from the Secretariat. In particular, we have a couple, I would call them grumpy graphics, about the fact that our best guesses now do point at falling short, and so as we approach the last stretch, we think it's not irrelevant to point out that we might not make it, and it's time for people to wake up. So you can find all of those grumpy graphics and more in that pledging conference media pack that's on our website. Also, unrelated, we have a civil society letter to Finland. Please sign up. I know a few people have. If you haven't, please do. We'll be sending it tomorrow. And finally, we're very excited to announce that we're hiring. We're hiring a grants and MLE officer. It's popped up on the website. It's popped up on the listserv, on our social media. But if you are an MLE person or know one, send them our way. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Quentin. Thanks for remembering all of those reminders. And thank you everyone for joining today. And as I said, thanks to the colleagues from the Secretariat. And let's just keep in touch over these next few weeks so that we can, fight for what counts with or without grumpy graphics, whatever we need to do. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your days. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.